Good morning, viewers and the students. Today we are having two experts with us. I'm Shailendra Pandey, working in Arts College Singwar. It is in Dahod, and the two experts with me are Dr. Yashwant Sharma and Madam Suma Das. They both are working in Arts and Science College, Godhra. Today our topic of discussion is contextualized and situational communication. Now this is very interesting topic because we are living in 21st century, and it is a decade, or it is a century in which we are having communication, and continuously this communication is leading to great results in business and in many fields. So before going to the terms, the major terms in this contextualized and situational communication, I'm going to ask Suma ma'am, what is communication? Will you throw some light? What is communication in a very proper sense?
Let us first see the meaning of communication, the origin of communication. This word has been taken from Latin language, and there the word is communis, and word means common, and it's the whole term means the common ground of understanding. So it is the basis of understanding, cooperation and action. We just communicate and cooperate with one another, and then we put it into action. It is an interchange of thoughts and opinions, and it links between the individuals and groups. So we can say that it is a two-way process. So we it requires and necessitates understanding and proper feedback from the co-communicator. Then communication is very much different from interaction. Interaction is not very much meaningful, and communication is very meaningful, very exact. So we can say that communication is different from interaction, and interaction is a part of communication.
Interaction leads us towards communication.
Towards communication.
It may or may not be communication.
Sometimes
because this communication has some serious purpose.
So sometimes interaction doesn't mean communication in a proper
Yes,
sense.
yes.
Because interaction is sometime at some point it is a failure.
Yes.
So that can
No,
not be called
we'll not be saying that it's a failure. Actually, what happens sometimes, suppose we are traveling in the bus, and what happens? We start talking to co-passenger,
Yeah.
and at that time we say lovely weather, isn't it? So what my point is, it may be termed as interaction, but when we talk of communication, means it has some serious purpose. Why we are making use of this? So what my point is, interaction leads us towards communication.
Fine. Now the next question which comes to my mind is when we are having a proper definition of communication which is given by ma'am. So again the question raises that why we need communication and what is the need of this communication?
See, we are human beings, and we are only given the we are only given the freedom to speak. We can express through words. We have got the language. So it is a human urge to communicate. We cannot live in this world without communication. It is very much necessary for us to communicate, and that is the reason why we communicate, and with that only we can live here. We can just talk to people, we can reach at certain points, certain results. So that is the need of human beings only, not the other animals. They communicate, but that is in non-verbal change. So there we need a speaker, or he is the sender of a message, then he is the encoder of the message, and then receiver is there at the other end who receives the whatever the sender speaks, then he listens and decodes the message, and in between these two, the sender and the receiver, one must have a message to be transmitted, and then through some medium he has to transmit the message. So that is the channel. So it can be oral, it can be written. So it depends on the sender what medium he chooses. Then the path followed by the communication is always circuitous. Circuitous means it begins at the
With the sender.
and it reaches at the sender, because he has to get some feedback. He has to know whether the receiver has been able to understand, he has been able to make up his mind according to the message or not. So he initiates the communication.
Now, when we are talking about, we have already talked about what is communication and why we need communication. So one question again comes to the mind. In last 2 decades, there was a very important term, structuralism. So, and now you, as a functional, you are working in functional English department. So I would like to see the difference between structuralism and dysfunctional approach. Because this is very debatable topic in last 20 years. So what do you think the main differences between functional and structural?
structural approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you throw some light on that?
Of course, why not? See, if you would like to know the difference between structural and functional approach, then we will have to go deep. See what happens in the, we can say, 1940s. We find beginning of this structural approach, and all of us are the product of this. We are taught all the grammar with the help of grammar translation method, and what happens here? We were taught how to change from active to passive, from direct to indirect. We know transformation of sentences from one tense to another tense. So what I mean to say that focus is on the form, not on the use of language. Then what happens? If focus is on the form, then definitely analysis of code is primary. Analysis of code is primary, and language is seen as a referential function. When we talk of this, language is seen as a referential function, means we are giving some sort of information with that. And when we talk of functional approach, here the description of ways of speech is focused. And when it is focused, what we find, use of language is, analysis of use of language is primary, because we want to fill the gap between what is required in society and what is taught in the classes. Our learners, see what we have seen, our learners, they start learning English right from class 5th, and when they complete their post graduation, in spite of this they are not able to communicate in English. What is the problem? Because all the time we have put focus on the structures, on the forms. They may be good at rules, but they don't know where to use. They know where to use article, tense, preposition. The problem is where to use active voice, where to use article and or the. So they get confused or they make mistakes. So what my point is, analysis of language use is primary here, because with the advent of globalization, when the world has become global village, and we talk of, means in terms of trade and national boundaries, doesn't have any meaning. So for this functional approach, means focus is on the functional part of language is much more important. That is the need. We have decided to talk of this, and today's topic is quite relevant. And what the third point is, language is seen as a gamut of socio-cultural functions. Here what happens, we are putting focus over functions, because language cannot be taught in isolation.
Yeah.
Actually what happens in real life, when we use language, suppose we want to get some work done, suppose we want to, we have forgotten our pen, and we request somebody to please give your pen, or we are coming to college and on the way our scooty gets punctured, then we require a lift from somebody so that we can reach college in time. So what happens? At that time we make request, or sometimes we go to principal and we complain about other students, those who tease us, that is complaint. So what my point is, heterogeneous. When we talk of function, means competence and performance. Chomsky has also talked of these two terms. So performance means, when we talk of performance, definitely heterogeneity will be there, because we cannot expect, we can expect but we cannot make sure that fellow will be talking of that. In the past, we had this situational language teaching, means that was on the basis of structural approach. But what happens? Mechanical situations were used at that time. Mechanical situations were used means, sometime what happens? Teacher walks in the class and asks his students what I am doing in the class.
Yes.
So what they say? Sir, you are walking in the class. So what my point is, while walking, we don't say what I am doing, I am walking. We don't say like this. So what is the relevant of keeping or using these type of situations? So what my point is, if we go for this type of situation, then what will happen? We can have some sort of homogeneity. But here in functional approach, heterogeneous means responses we find. And for
Yes.
that we will have to prepare.
I'll have to add here something.
Yes, please.
In structural approach, we just put stress on the correct English. Means the structures should be very much correct. But in functional English, our aim is to communicate. So the language should function in any way, and the other person should be able to understand our point. So appropriateness of the language is stressed upon in the functional English, right?
That means we are always focusing on the perfectionist mode.
Perfection of the language in
Perfection of the
structural
language.
approach, yes.
But we are not forcing the students to learn the language
the
and
rules,
communicate
learn
the
the rules.
language
Yeah.
in
Yes.
that way.
And
Actually, what
here
happens?
we-
Accuracy and fluency.
Yeah.
In a
Yes,
structural
yes.
approach, we put focus over accuracy.
Yeah.
Suppose
Yes.
sometimes there are some learners, they try to say something, we say, sit down, you don't know, you are making mistake, and we do not have patience. We go to other student. So what happens here? Focus is on correctness. But in communicative English or in
Is an
contextualized matter, we will have to focus on the fluency. If they are making some mistakes while communicating with us, let it be. If
Yes.
message is conveyed, then
It's
we
okay.
should go further. We know that they are making mistakes, and our job is to correct them. But at the same time, if we say that okay, you sit down, you are making mistake, then
Then
throughout
they
his
are
life,
discouraged.
he or she will not be
Yes.
able to
Yes.
use English language. So here our sixth point is linguistic competence and communicative competence. Linguistic competence means mastery over structures of language. What we find in our learners' case, that they know what all the rules of language. They know what is the rule of active voice to passive voice, or means narration. We can talk. But in communicative competence, what is what? It is linguistic competence plus much more. In linguistic competence, we have mastery over the structures plus
Yes.
ability to make use at
The
appropriate
application.
time appropriately. So appropriateness is much more important. And what happens? Next point, that is analysis of sentence out of context is important in structural approach.
Yeah.
But here what we do, we put focus over meaningful discourse, because meaningful situations are to be taken if we want to make communication meaningful or successful. So focus should be on context.
Context.
Unlike structural approach, in which what we find, we are teaching English language in isolation. We are actually, what happens, we are not teaching them as a whole. What we are doing, we are teaching them, suppose we are teaching articles, so we are putting focus on the rules of articles, where articles can be used. So what my point is, we should find out, we should try to know what are their needs, and then we will have to select
Frame the exercise.
situations
accordingly. So I hope it would be
Yeah.
clear.
So you want to say that in communicative approach, there is total encouragement to the students,
Yeah.
and in a structural it is not so. So I think this is very important for students, because if they are encouraged for language, then only they can develop themselves. So now here again in point number 7, as you have mentioned, again one question is coming to my mind, and
Yes,
that
please.
is, how can we differentiate between meaningful situation and meaningless situation?
Yes.
Can you throw some light
Yes,
on
of
meaningful
course,
situation
of
and
course. Why
meaningless situation?
Yes. We talk of today's topic is contextualized communication. For this, we will have to go back to social linguistics. In social linguistics, we have 3 terms. First is speech situations, second is speech event, and third is speech act. So, if you look at this slide, what you find in social linguistics means language used in society is analyzed with reference to the socio-cultural context. Actually, what I have seen earlier, the socio-cultural context plays a vital role. If we ignore this, then we cannot make sure the success of our communication. So what my point is, Dale Hyams, he has talked of this, and his quotation is very much present here. He says that within a community, one readily detects many situations associated with or marked by the absence or presence of speech. Means any situation can be taken, it depends upon the level of learners. Sometimes what happens, we can say situations of a marriage ceremony or birthday party or celebrations, or suppose sometimes what happens, there is a fight between students, they are quarreling with one another, law making. Many other examples can also be taken. What I am saying, that situations must be meaningful. If they are not meaningful, then they will not be able to generate interest among the learners. So we will have to select situations according to the level of the students. Otherwise, what will happen? We cannot expect desired results. So, what I think that is very much clear to you.
that is clear,
What is
and-
this?
Yes, here we can also say that we can talk of our own things, means in Indian culture, Indian context, and that. And if we bring from some Western side, means if we talk of carnivals here, that will not be appropriate. That is, means they will not be able to understand it in properly, because socio-culturally it is very much different from our culture. So there we that situation will be meaningless for the student, and they will not take enough part in that situation. And if we bring from their own culture, they will be participating in a very, very beautiful way. They will be very active because they understand, they know the things, so they will be able to express it in a better way.
They will not be able to
Yes.
realize whether they are making use of
Yes.
English or not, because
Yeah.
they will be so much involved with the subject. And we will have some clippings we will like to show later on. Then we can see the practical.
Yes.
So I think
Result,
you personally feel that as a functional teacher,
Yeah.
you personally feel that the meaningful situation must be created by the teacher
By the
and
teacher
teacher.
Of
only.
course.
By the teacher.
Yeah.
By the teacher.
And
activities,
that must be
situations.
taken from our society, our culture,
Yes,
our
yes,
environment,
yes,
and
yes.
that way it can be meaningful.
Of course,
So that
otherwise
is really good concept from you. Now we are going to have a discussion on speech situation. How
Yes.
can we make a situation speechful?
Okay. What my point is, earlier I talked of three terms: speech situations, speech events, and speech acts. Speech situation is a broad term. Under this, we have this speech event. Means this is what smaller unit of description.
Yes.
Okay. And here, Delheims again he has said that activities or some aspects of the activities can be taken. And third thing is, anything can be taken: conversation, lecture, formal introduction. Okay, so speech event. Suppose we have a broad topic. Recently we had this Uttarayan. People celebrated Uttarayan with zeal and enthusiasm. So let us show one movie,
Yeah.
and then
So
Well,
I think that
yeah.
movie
So what
can
my point is-
do our job.
yes,
Yes, definitely.
that is not the movie. Actually, this is the clipping.
Please show us. Yeah.